This is pretty deep in here. I expected a good trout. Hit. There we go. Oh! Oh! Travel by water has been something that I've just recently come to enjoy. It has become a new adventure, a complete perspective shift on places I've previously been to, and a novel route of passage to places that I've yet to visit. Beyond this, it allows me to pack more gear and provisions into the backcountry than I could carry on my back alone, which consequently allows me to stay longer and in more comfort. I used to enjoy or take pride in being able to sleep on the cold, hard ground with minimal comforts, but as I've aged and life has become more stressful, I like to take these retreats to be primitive but restful and comfortable in a basic way. I had been looking forward to this trip for weeks, as it'd be the first time that Dad and I had been up together in a couple of years now. So we packed up the canoe and hit the river system early. We made a pretty good team in the canoe for a couple of otherwise land lovers. The only changes that I'd noticed since I'd last been up here is that the water level had dropped significantly. Now, instead of the usual 3 portages separated by paddleable streams of water, I found myself having to drag the canoe a lot more through very shallow, sandy sections. Despite that, we made pretty short work of the trip up and arrived at base camp in good time. It was a dark, overcast day. The air in the woods hung heavy with the mist burning off from the morning. It felt like the perfect conditions to catch a nice string of trout. We set up base camp and then hit the river for a bit of fishing. At first, all we were getting was chub. It was incredibly disappointing. Chub after chub. It was becoming exhausting taking them off the hook. Doubt started to sink in. I was standing in the same spot, using the same lures that I had before, and no trout. Not one single trout. So we decided to change up our tactics. We moved from sort of the open water area into the brook section. It's beautiful. It's just punctuated by innumerable rocks that have eroded from God knows where. The fast water in these rapids would convalesce into small pools of water. In my experience, it is worth dropping a worm into them. This type of brook trout fishing is extremely fun, from the rock hopping to the excitement of watching a trout dart out from under a rock to take your bait. I'll never get tired of catching good old brookies this way. The gray skies had now burned off and it was a beautiful summer day. It was now early afternoon, and Dad and I continued to leapfrog our way up this kilometer-long section of rapids, fishing each and every pool that we could get a line into. By the time we'd reached the top of the rapids, we'd caught 6 trout between the 2 of us, and thrown back I don't know how many. It was now about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Dad and I were both pretty sore from sunburn and pretty dehydrated. So we decided to head back to base camp and hang out for a little while. We cut up a bit of firewood in anticipation for the evening and napped through a couple of showers that punctuated the afternoon. We decided to head back out for an evening fish. I don't think either of us held much faith in that we'd catch much this evening, but it turned out to be one of the finest nights of fishing I've ever experienced. We ended up with 4 more trout to finish off both of our daily bag limits, and then we proceeded to cook them on an open fire. The last and biggest trout of the day was caught almost by accident. A rod that I wasn't using had a bit of bait on the end of the hook and was dangling in just about an inch of water outside of the canoe. I was actively fishing with a different rod at the time when I saw that one begin to bend behind me. I saw the flash of the trout, and just in the nick of time I was able to reach back and from the rod tip fling him into the boat. To accompany our meal of nice brook trout, I decided to make a bit of wintergreen tea. Apparently I needed a lot more wintergreen brewing in the pot to give it some flavor. It just ended up tasting like a bit of hot river water. But at least the trout were absolutely excellent. We awoke to a far wetter day than the previous, but the excitement of the prior night's fishing was still fresh in both our minds, and we wanted to get back out on the water as quickly as possible. I got the pocket rocket fired up and was able to brew myself a nice cup of coffee and made myself a big bowl of oatmeal before hitting the water. We were back on the water just shortly after 7 a.m. and the excitement to get a hook in the water just was overwhelming. We fished our way along some deep open water pools. Within the first few casts, I could tell that it was going to be a good day. We were getting hits regularly and pulling in nice fish right off the bat. I had switched up bait and began using chub instead of worms as we'd run out. I found that I was losing a lot of fish initially and pretty quickly discovered that it was because I was using too big of a chunk of fish. I think that they were just kind of grabbing the bait and not necessarily getting caught on the hook. This trout would have been awesome. Unfortunately, I lost him in the scramble. We simply let the wind carry our canoe down the waterway, casting as it moved along the edge. I will never get tired of staring at that view. I hooked into this little landlock or brown trout. It was unharmed and I tossed him back. After probably just over an hour of fishing, Dad and I had filled both of our daily limits. We ended up with 10 absolutely beautiful trout measuring between 9 and 12 inches. I almost grieved the fact that we'd limited out so quickly. It was so much fun catching that I kind of wished I could have done it for longer. But I reminded myself that I do these trips to catch trout, eat trout, enjoy the tranquility and peace of nature, and leave these places as unscathed as possible. So with that, we began our exit down the river. All of the portages were seamless, and we traveled the river very safely and had no issues. The paddle out on these trips is always a great time for reflection. This particular trip brought to mind a Walt Whitman poem that I've always enjoyed, that coursing on whatever men's speculations, amid the changing schools, theologies, and philosophies, amid the bawling presentations of new and old, the round earth's silent vital laws, facts, modes continue. This place is so permanent. It really is one of the only places that I truly understand how to interact with.